Is Virginia in play for Republicans to win the race for president for the first time in decades? It sure looks that way, as both campaigns rushed to make appearances in the state before and after the big debate. Plus, we revisit a talk from Trump's former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, which will encourage your heart about the future of the nation. Welcome to Speak Up Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Hello, everybody. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up Virginia. Well, Victoria, for all those people that don't think Virginia is in play in the presidential campaign, last week was a really bad week for them.
Well, I mean, I can't say that I wasn't one of those people for a long time that thought, Trump hasn't won Virginia yet. This wouldn't be the year. But no, in fact, it is absolutely in play. And I'll tell you the obvious is the signal that it's in play is that everybody's coming here. They're opening offices, both parties. Both are having rallies before and after the big debate. And so, I think that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, I hope they're not wasting money and time and energy. You wouldn't think they are.
Well, we were the first state that Trump visited right after the debate. So that says something. I think it was Chesapeake.
Yeah. And I mean, the polls are saying, if you look at all the polls, and you got to watch how seriously you take all the polls. But when there's been like 17 in the aggregate all say you're in play. They're all heading that direction. You kind of have to say, okay, if they're all saying something, it's probably got some truth to it.
Well, things kicked off last week with a Democrat rally, and they were, going off of this 2-year anniversary of Dobbs. They even featured actress Ashley Judd coming out. They started with U.S. Representative Jennifer McClellan. Let's just watch a clip from that.
When we got a Democratic trifecta, we made Virginia a safe haven for abortion by removing the medically unnecessary barriers Republicans put in place. And now, because of Dobbs, but because of the hard work we did together, Virginia is the only state in the South without an abortion ban or extreme restrictions. We can be proud of that. But that can all go away depending on what happens this November.
Okay, so I think this whole thing made it pretty clear what their line in the sand is: unlimited abortion. That is their centerpiece for this campaign. And then, of course, we mentioned you had First Lady Jill Biden come out Thursday before the debate. What is your take on all of this happening right now?
Well, they definitely want abortion to be the top issue. They think that's their winning issue. They're very clear they want Virginia to be the abortion capital of the South. They have basically said, look, when we had all three parts of the legislature, both legislators and the governor, we got to strip away all the protections. They're very proud of that, and they want more. And so I think we have to be very aware of what the end game is, and I hope that voters are very aware. But, it's just interesting because, President Biden won Virginia by about 10 points last time. So I think that does tell you there's a real panic on their side if they're thinking Virginia's in play. That's a pretty big move from 4 years ago.
Okay. Let's talk about for just a moment the debate that everybody's been talking about for the last several days. We got to start with the whole abortion exchange. Let's just listen to a clip from that for a second.
He can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
You're lying. That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
Well, of course, Virginia, made famous by Governor Northam, makes it into another debate.
They mentioned Northam at least twice, I think.
This guy's statement is legendary. And it's legendary because he said something out loud he wasn't supposed to say. And he's a doctor, right? So he, if it weren't happening, you wouldn't expect the doctor to reference it. And so that's a big deal. And I'm glad that Trump went there because really what is very important is that people understand that there are that it isn't about some protection around abortion or none. The other side's trying to make it a case where it's like we're going to ban all abortion, tomorrow if they don't win. Well, I would love, I don't believe in abortion, but that's not how that's going to be. But people forget to talk about the other side of the extremism, and I'm glad that Trump keeps pointing to that says no, they really are for abortion up until the moment of birth, and in the case of what Northam said, they don't seem to mind when the baby's been born, still making that decision.
Well, afterward, they kept fact-checking Trump on that statement like he was lying about what Northam said. What's your take on that?
They've been trying to undo what Northam said for how many years now, and I just don't think it's successful because the clip is there, the video's there. You have to doubt reality. I mean, that clip is now been on every news outlet for years, and yes, they're still trying to get out, oh, he didn't really mean that. That's not exactly what he was saying. That never happens. Yeah. Okay, but it did happen. He did say it. He is a doctor.
Yeah. Okay, so in a lot of ways, this debate, what was actually ended up being more important than anything in a lot of ways was the performance of both candidates. So it's no secret, the Dems were all panicking about Biden's performance. There was even some speculation about whether they would try to replace him. What do you think? Do you think he could be replaced this late in the game?
Well, he had one job to do, and that was to look competent. That was his only job, was look like you know what you're talking about, that you're up for the job. And unfortunately, President Biden did not pass that test by, not a biased opinion, by their own party being very concerned now that he really doesn't look competent. So that's a huge problem. And most people thought Trump just had to look, the bar he had to hit was, I'm not going to get overly angry. I'm not going to sort of like go name call and go after somebody in an inappropriate way. I think Trump did end up hitting the bar he needed to hit. And so, yeah, they're panicking on the left because this is not how they wanted the debate to go. It is interesting to hear all the dialogue about can they replace him, right? Because he has to voluntarily step out. That's the reality of after he's the nominee before the convention. The only thing that can happen is he agrees to step down.
Yeah.
You can't. The voters don't get to put somebody else in at this point. And that's, now, what's funny about it is it was such an immediate reaction, and we're used to the mainstream covering over these problems. And so the fact that the mainstream media was panicking.
Yeah, you knew it was bad.
Yeah, and it was so bad to the point where I saw a lot of the sort of right-wing chatter going, was this all planned? Was this all like did they all know he was going to be this bad?
Joy Reid was talking about how bad it was.
Right, and it was just so quick. It was like, is it possible they just needed him to implode to actually get him to step out? But then there's talks right afterwards. He's not, like the next couple of days there were talks, he's not stepping out. That's what his team was saying. So they got a problem.
It almost makes you feel sorry for him, the amount of pressure that may be on him to drop out, and just, I don't even want to think about what they're having to do to keep him looking reasonably competent at this point. It's almost getting into a compassion issue with the elderly.
He's constantly mixing things, and you could see that in the debate. He has something on his mind that's not quite the answer to the question, and you can't answer an abortion question with an immigration answer, and that was happening all throughout. And so I think there are people who are genuinely worried. This is our president, like
right now.
Yes, I think they actually set a little bit more panic about the moment we're in, not even November, but the real question, and this is what all the pundits are talking about, they know it's within the Democrat Party, there is a power struggle. There's the Clinton wing, there's the Obama wing, there's the fact that we have a
Gavin Newsom wing.
We have Gavin Newsom, and we have the fact that Kamala Harris is the vice president and would normally be the next option for being president.
And a minority woman.
But her favorabilities, some say they have been lower than Biden's, maybe not after this debate. I would have to compare. I haven't actually looked to see like post-debate Biden election popularity versus Kamala, but they've got a problem that they would have to resolve. That's not small. Who gets power is always the question in politics, and it's. Everybody sees their moment right then, right? So the moment there's a weakness, any politician that wants to go, this is their moment to seize. You saw Gavin Newsom in the spin right afterwards, and it was like all the reporters coming up to him. But it's not like he's the heir apparent, because there are people who are in the Biden administration that don't want to lose their jobs. They want to continue. It's the people around the president. We always have to remember, it's not just the individual. They come with an army. So anyway, we'll watch this shake out over the next...
Regardless... we need to be praying for our nation.
Correct.
And where we find ourselves out right now, and just really pray protection over our nation during this whole process. But as we head into what is going to be a raucous campaign battle. Maybe it's not so raucous at this point. I'm really not sure what to think.
Hard to
But anyway, it would be a good time to revisit a speech from one of Trump's former cabinet members, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who spoke at our gala last year. So I thought, now would be a good time to listen to this because, as we are celebrating the birth of our country, he is such a patriot. I mean, he just loves our nation. And he has this optimism that if we will return to a fear of God, to trust in God, we can find our way out of these dark cultural times. So I just love that he has that hope, has that love for our nation.
Yeah, I mean, he's just such an incredible man. I mean, in addition to being the 70th Secretary of State under President Trump, he was also former head of the CIA. And as we shared before, he just did so much to strengthen religious liberty for our country. And so, yeah, I always think hearing from him is of benefit.
And he could well be a cabinet member if Trump wins.
He's been before.
So with that said, let's hear Mike Pompeo discuss not only our nation's challenges, but also the hope for the nation.
Elizabeth mentioned that I taught 5th grade Sunday school. Any of you teach Sunday school? You could be Secretary of State someday. I certainly would have never dreamed it, and I can assure you that if you can keep 5th grade boys in your seat, you are ready for Chairman Kim. There is no doubt about that. Look, it's great to be here, to have a chance to talk just a few days ahead of the next Republican primary debate. I decided to be with you and not in Iowa. That is a happy thing for my family and me. But it wasn't because what will be decided then and what you will all decide in the state that I now call home, here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, isn't absolutely critical. You're all here because you know that we face enormous challenges, and we must prepare for them, and we must win them. You heard your Attorney General, and then you heard Victoria speak to these. I won't recount them. I simply want all of you to know that I'm an optimist. I believe deeply that we will prevail. I believe we will prevail for a number of reasons. First of all, I believe it because, you all invited an unemployed former diplomat to your dinner tonight. That was really charitable and kind of you. But I believe it mostly because as I walked around the room this evening and had a chance to meet with a handful of you, I know that the solutions will come from here, from this place. I believe it deeply not because some president or some governor or some state delegate or whatever it may be will solve all of these problems. These problems will be solved in our pews and in our churches. It will be solved. They will be solved at our Boy Scout meetings. They'll be solved by those of you who are just crazy enough to run for school board. I love you for that. People often think that the first time that I ran for office was when I ran for Congress. It's not true. I ran for my homeowners association board. Yeah, I cared deeply about shake shingles in my neighborhood. I laugh to this day. I do not remember which side of the argument I was on, but I cared about it a lot. It's because of those things. People who take food to their neighbors, people who are prepared to help an elderly person. It's people who will go stand in front of an abortion mill and pray for the mothers who are going there. It's people who serve in crisis pregnancy centers all around our great nation. And so while I know we need to win elections, we need presidents, governors, attorneys general, state elected officials, all across the board, district attorneys in every big city of America. We need them to believe in the things that people in this room believe in. I am confident that America will have another 250 great years because of you, because of the things that you do. And the fact that the Family Foundation has been at this, to your point about whatever the season may be, and will be at it whatever season comes to the forefront. You introduced me as the 70th Secretary of State. Whenever I hear that, I'm mindful that President Trump was the 45th president of the United States. So there was a lot more turnover in my gig than his. No, don't laugh. Don't laugh. I checked my phone every morning, made sure there wasn't a tweet. I still had a job, and I would go to work. I know, it seems like a long time ago. You miss it, don't you? Yeah. You should know that so do I. I miss it not because of me. I miss it because today our nation finds itself in a much more troubled place than when I left. Because our nation finds itself on its back foot and weak. And to the rest of the world, it looks chaotic. And absent American leadership, the world is indeed chaotic. And we, the good people of Virginia, the good people of America, need to make sure that we get the right leaders that will protect and defend the things that we know to be important. Every one of you knows, every one of you has read. You know that this nation was founded on a Judeo-Christian idea. Many of the leaders who put that there came from this great commonwealth. But today there is not a leader in this administration that is prepared to defend that. Indeed, as you've heard the stories where people are confused about how many genders there may be. You've heard the stories about people who aren't prepared to talk about real equality as opposed to racial segregation. You've heard the stories of people who in our schools want to teach our kids things that are so deeply disconnected from what each of you as parents know to be true. And yet we have leaders today that won't speak these basic truths. I know that we will right this ship. I know we'll get to be back in that place. I watched what we did for 4 years. For 4 years, we stood on the world stage and made clear that not a single one of your taxpayer dollars would go anywhere in the world to fund an abortion. It seems so intrinsically fundamental and basic, and yet within minutes of my departure from the State Department, that policy was reversed. And today, your money is being spent alongside that of George Soros and Planned Parenthood all across the world to kill babies. It is indecent, it is un-American, it is in stark contrast to what we know to be the greatness of our country. Now, when you defend these things, you're going to get shots taken at you. I'm confident you've seen that, Victoria. I'm confident many of you have seen it. Some of us decide to go quiet. There are days when my wife wishes that were so for me. But the truth is, my wife and I know that being quiet is unacceptable. Tonight, when we received our prayer, it was very clear that there are pastors here who are not prepared to be quiet. God bless you. It is an imperative. The pulpits are far more likely to address these grievous wrongs than are the salons in Washington. I'm confident of that, and so I am counting on you. I had my fair share of slings and arrows. I'll never forget there were these headlines. One of them said, Mike Pompeo, evangelical zealot. It said, there was another, this was the New York Times. The New York Times said, he is the most overtly Christian Secretary of State we've ever had. That's probably true. And then my favorite, I think this was the Washington Post. This one said, Mike Pompeo, God's diplomat. My son called me on that one and said, man, could not get any better, Dad. Like if that's on your tombstone, call it good, mail it in, you are done. You'll have to love my son. My son's now 33. Just recently married about a year. So far, so good. There was a day, it was the second day in a row that the headline, once David Ignatius in the Post or the Times, and the other was Tom Friedman in the other fictionalized document, said that I was the worst Secretary of State in American history. Now, I have to tell you, worst. So my son calls. He never bothered me when I was working. He knew I was busy. But he thought, man, the second time they say he's the worst ever, I need to make sure Dad's okay. So he interrupts me in the middle of the workday. I was panicked because when they came in and said, sir, your son urgently needs to speak with you, I thought, boy, something's gone wrong. So I run to the phone, I run out of the meeting, and he says, Dad, did you see the Post today? No, son, I stopped reading it. My cardiologist made me stop. He said, Dad, they said you were the worst Secretary of State of all time. I said, I didn't see it. I saw it yesterday. And he said, yeah. But he goes, I've been thinking, you can't be the worst. There was this guy named Elihu Washburn, and he only lasted 11 days. Surely you're better than him. So we have a club called We're Number Two, and we march on. I tell that story not to be a victim, not to say, gosh, woe is me, and see how I stood up and they came at me, but because when you stand up, they will come for you. They will try to make you quiet, and then worse if you are not. Know that the worst thing that you can do is accede to their demand for silence. In the face of evil, truth has to be spoken. We know that. It is hard to do some days. When my son was in college, it was a tough place, right? And I did not tell him he had to take on every battle every day at every moment. That's just not possible. But I did tell him he had to take on a lot of battles, a lot of days, and at many moments. And then he needed to do so in love. Because he cared about the people who were speaking untruths and were speaking evil. He needed to do it not because he hated them, but because he loved his Lord and our nation. This is why you too must continue to speak up. It's why you must come to evenings like this to be re-energized and refocused. It's why you need to continue to support organizations like this that will speak on your behalf when you're busy doing the things that we all do, raising our children, taking care of our parents, running our business. This is an organization, the Family Foundation, that can speak in a way that is clear and direct and the truth. By the way, I've learned a couple things tonight. I first of all did not know that Northam was a cuss word. Well played, Victoria. It's also struck me I'm from Kansas. Everybody remembers the Wizard of Oz. That people remind me of. They say, Mike, you're not in Kansas anymore. Little Toto jokes and the like. You all remember the famous song which went lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Tonight I was thinking Yunkin and Sears and Miaris, oh my. What a wonderful thing. You are blessed by that. Pray for them, work with them, build them up. Make sure that the team comes along behind them, and you will be rewarded for that here on earth and beyond. I watch us undermine our core cultural institutions, and I watch Yunkin and Sears and Miaris try to reject that and fix that. I think about the institution that I began my career in as a young soldier, as a young lieutenant. Today, we are missing our recruiting goals in our armed forces by about a quarter. That's tragic for today, but think about the E5s and E6s and the young enlisted soldiers that will be missing for decades to come when their nation needs them to call on them. Now, if you ask the administration why that is so, they would say because young people have lost their desire to serve and because the kids aren't exercising anymore and 1,000 reasons. The truth is, when our military leaders become politicized and you tell a young soldier that the most important thing you can do in your life is make sure that our military vehicles are carbon neutral by 2030. No kidding. I was a tanker. Happy to have my M1 tank be carbon neutral, but what I really cared about was that it was going to go 60 miles an hour and kill bad guys. When you tell our young people that you've walked them off the mission, when diversity and equity and inclusion trump merit, when you tell our young children that, maybe the military is not such a good thing, that will walk away from service in droves. This is dangerous for our country. And we cannot permit that to happen. We may need to make sure that the next generation of those who will choose to risk their lives on our behalf is prepared to fight and win our wars. I never want to forget, I know we have many veterans in this room today. We're now 2 years on from the debacle that was our departure from Afghanistan. I want to take just a moment. Many of you have children, cousins, friends who served in Afghanistan. Some of you would have served there yourself. I want to make sure you know this. The work that you and your loved ones did in Afghanistan mattered. It saved American lives. And the debacle that resulted in the death of 13 Americans is not your fault. That was political failure, not the fault of our fighting warriors. And I want every one of you Afghanistan veterans and all of your families to know that this former Secretary of State loves you, values you, and know that your service was noble. Now, there's been a lot of talk about education tonight. That's all to the good, because it is the truth, and you can find scores of quotes from America's most famous leaders that will reaffirm the central fact. Your Attorney General quoted Plato. That's way above my pay grade. You should know that if we get that wrong, then everything I've told you here tonight about my optimism will be proven incorrect. If we fail to teach the next generation about the greatness of our country and the decency of our people, then this experiment, this grand experiment for 250 years, is at real risk. I met just about every bad guy in the world. I spent time with Xi Jinping. I spent time with Vladimir Putin. I met the Taliban. I spent a lot of time with Chairman Kim in North Korea, and I will live a shorter time for that. They're bad guys. Many of them, including the Ayatollah in Iran, want to wipe our nation from the face of the earth because we are a beacon and our existence undermines what it is they tell their people each day. But you should know I'm confident. I'm confident we'll push back against that risk. We'll figure out a way to take down Xi Jinping in China. We'll push back against Vladimir Putin. Chairman Kim's nuclear program can be stopped as well. But if we let Randi Weingarten run our schools, we can't get back. She is. I said on live TV one day, I was asked, who's the most dangerous person in the world? And I said, well, Randi Weingarten. And you should have seen the looks on their faces. They're like, what about the Ayatollah? I'm like, yeah, long ways away. She's touching our kids every day. You have school districts in America where not a single child is reading a grade level. You have school districts in America where attendance and truancy exceed anything we've ever seen before. You have school districts in America where the ability to teach about our founding and real American history is now wholly eliminated. That is the result of a determined effort from the progressive left, led by the teachers' unions, that risks undermining our republic. And so I served in the national security space, first as CIA director and then as Secretary of State. But the thing that frightens me the most is that we will not transmit the greatness of our nation to those who come behind us. Bless you to the Family Foundation for working on that tirelessly each and every day. Look, I know many of you think I do my part, I write my check, I vote. That's all to the good. But I want to encourage you to do a bit more. Find another place. Drag 10 of your friends who didn't vote in the last election to vote. Encourage them to come here to this gathering next year. There are so many things you can do. Do not be daunted by those who may have done more than you. I was the CIA director, and I had been nominated to be the Secretary of State. And it was my swearing in. I had survived my second confirmation hearing. I never served in combat, but man, I was close. I was walking down the hallway. President Trump was there to swear me in. Vice President Pence was there. There was a big hall on the beautiful 8th floor at your State Department. It's daunting for someone like me to think I'm going to have this role. I'm going to be fourth in line for the presidency. It's incredibly humbling. But again, my son, we're walking down this hallway, and on the hallway are pictures of every former Secretary of State portraits. And he's walking down the hallway, my wife is with me, and my son starts reading the names: Webster, Madison, Adams, Jefferson, Pompeo. Dad, I don't think so. You are out of your league. You know, I chuckled, but not much, because I was pretty focused on making sure I got the words right when the president read them to me in the oath. But you know, I reflected on that every day I walked past those portraits as I entered the State Department. I reflected on several things. First of all, I was never going to be. Indeed, I will never be Jefferson or Madison or Webster. But each of them can inspire me, and they did, and they do. For all of us, each of us, we may never achieve that greatness, but these great people can inspire us. Read of them deeply, love them wholeheartedly, admire them, use them to continue to energize and re-energize you when you grow weary or you grow tired. We would always remind ourselves in the Pompeo family when we had this moment where we had this leadership responsibility to this nation, we would remind people every day. My first job was to keep the State Department at the front to make sure our young soldiers, sailors, and airmen never had to go fight. That we would put America first and use diplomacy to resolve the conflicts that presented risk to us. But beyond that, we were always reminded that no matter the pressure, no matter the difficult decisions, that there was a higher being looking out for us. That there was an even greater calling, even a greater calling than this nation. And that my Savior, Jesus Christ, our Lord, was watching everything that we did. And so we prayed for our work, we prayed for our nation, and we prayed that he would give us the wisdom and guidance to fulfill our responsibilities. You know, tonight we began with the Pledge of Allegiance, we sang the national anthem, and then we prayed. This is the greatness of America. When we get this right, then he will provide us the wisdom, he will provide us the guidance, and this country will get another 250 great years. Thanks for giving me the chance to be with you. Thank you for being part of the Family Foundation. May God bless you. May the Lord watch over this organization, and may those 250 years treat you, your family, in the way that the Lord would demand that they all be treated for their good works. Thank you, God bless you, and have a wonderful evening.
Okay, I just love how he started out talking about his first foray into running for office was running for the Homeowners Association. I mean, that kind of gives hope for a lot of people out there.
I guess, although if you've been on Homeowners Association, that can be as challenging as actual high-level politics. But anyway, and yeah, I guess it made me nervous because my husband's done that in the past,
yeah,
and I have no interest. No. We're not starting any rumors. I have no bandwidth for anything like that. Anyway, all that to say, I don't think that's in our future.
We won't go for you,
but there are other people who have done no. But there are other people who have done great Homeowners Association that can turn into our next Secretary of State just with a little bit of time and care and attention. That's why we do candidate training at the Family Foundation Action. Right. So anyway, but no, it is. His talk was really encouraging too, because I think he understands just that if we're going to turn things around, it's really going to be about people of faith standing up and having the courage to resist this effort to silence all that we believe in, and our willingness to stand up for that, for freedom, for truth, for goodness. So that was encouraging.
I did also appreciate his balanced perspective, because here you have this major world leader. He's been in some really tough situations with villains overseas, and he still got this humility to say, I'm not putting my trust in all of that power that comes at the White House. I'm putting my trust in Jesus. So I just feel like it's good to have that perspective as we go through this period right now. And like I said, he could be a cabinet member potentially. I think he could be on a short list.
Well, certainly he has been. So I would hope he'd be on the short list for sure. But I'll just say this. I have to point out that I loved that he told our audience, this was at our gala last year, and he told our audience to next year show up with 10 of your friends. And so to me, that was the best part, because we're right around that season right now where people are starting to sponsor the gala, and they're starting to bring their friends and all that stuff. And so anyway, all that to say, we've got this great gala coming up with Bethany Hamilton on September 28th, and I think we should all take his advice, and instead of, if we were a guest last year, I think a lot of folks come as a guest, and then the next year sponsor a table, bring your circle of friends. So I just appreciate that. But Bethany Hamilton, we're going to get a great message again this year just about this whole issue of gender and sports, and
And just so folks will remember, she is, if you remember when she was this adorable young surfer and lost her arm in a shark attack and just came back from that, to be competitive in world competitions. And she talks openly about how her faith played a key role in that, in addition to, as you said, coming out on really being bold lately, talking about the girls' sports issue. So the theme is faith unwavering. Just go to familyfoundation.org, look for that banner, Faith Unwavering, so you can figure out how to get your friends involved. So we hope to see you there again, September 28th. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together. Be sure to share this podcast, and we'll see you next time.